I'm Addison Brazil. Grief Club, the podcast, starts now. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Grief Club, the podcast, where I take parts of my book, First Year of Grief Club, A Gift from a Friend Who Gets It, and use them as launching points for deeper conversations with special guests and friends. This week, we're at the point in the book where we start to talk about survivor's guilt for the first time, and the idea of going on without our loved ones, maybe going to places that we only went with them and having experiences that we didn't think we'd have without these people in our lives. In addition, this is a very special episode because it is airing on the anniversary of my own father's passing. So in that spirit, I've decided this week to invite one of my dearest friends, Chris Caron, to talk to me about the loss of a father and how he's moved forward. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you so much. I'm already crying, so I think we're in for a winding road here. My name is Chris Caron. Addison and I have been friends for just under 10 years. But I lost my dad 12 years prior to that. So 22 years ago, I'm going to age myself. I'm 38 years old now, and at age 16, my dad died of lung cancer. Obviously, a very challenging time for a young man to lose the man in his life. My dad was diagnosed when I was 14 years old, so the journey kind of began then, kind of set the table for what the rest of my life was going to look like. Since 16, I have found a lot of creative and interesting ways to get over grief. I've experienced a lot more where that came from. And because of my early experiences, I was kind of well equipped to navigate the next ones. So I'm really excited to honor my dad today, and to honor your dad and to learn more about him, especially leading up to the anniversary.
I love it. Before we go any further, we're going to do what we do every week, and I'm just going to ask you to take a deep breath, and we're going to check in. And I'm going to ask you, after that deep breath, in one word right now, how are you feeling physically?
I'm feeling strong. Physically strong.
I'm going to say calm. In one word, how are you feeling mentally?
I would say feeling calm.
I'm going to say intrigued. And in one word, how are you feeling emotionally?
I will say, when you were giving the intro, so this is more than one word already, but when you were giving the intro, I started to feel sad. So I would say emotionally, I'm feeling a little sad to be revisiting this section of my life.
Yeah, I'm going to say hopeful. And I don't know why, and I don't need to explain. That's the
you did say one word.
One word answer. I know, but everybody breaks that rule. Okay. The next thing we have to do is, in a way of housekeeping, is something I ask every guest that comes on the show, which you may have heard before, is if a kid walked up to you and asked you, what does the word grief mean? How would you explain grief to a kid?
I would explain grief as figuring out the personal ways that you can deal with something that has been incredibly challenging. Because grief doesn't always show up in the way that we're about to dive in. So I think a kid needs to know that death is not the only time they're going to experience grief.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's kind of what makes our friendship special. And I have a few other friendships like this, but there's this extra knowingness that is not the norm. I mean, it's not normal for us in our friend groups that we didn't have dads from such a young age. It is this sort of special thing. But what at least I've recognized is, just like everyone else through my 20s and early 30s, is all the other types of grief processes that they've gone through, is like the relationships and the loss of what they thought life would be, and like not getting the job they thought they wanted or into the college, or which are all like full grief processes, but we just don't call them that like in the same way, and we don't recognize them that. But I think such a good point that like if someone pulled me aside and said you will feel grief about more than just when there's a funeral as a kid, I think that's extremely helpful, and I would have loved to hear that early. So I'm glad I asked you that.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. I listened to your last podcast, which
Okay.
prepared me for that answer.
Okay. So you were there.
Yeah.
Everyone who listens to my podcast will know that if I'm having a close friend on, I'm trying desperately to behave for the next hour. And that humor is my ultimate way of getting out of going into the deep and the sad. But I really am gonna check in with you now, and we're gonna do something special today. And I loved this idea when we came up with it. It's kind of the let's talk about our dads conversation. And it's something that people could do with another peer or friend or grief sibling, as I call them in the book, someone else in the grief arena, where maybe you didn't know each other at the time where you lost the person, and you can just alternate asking questions, giving both people a chance to kind of speak about who they're honoring, but also get to know them. And I was saying to Chris yesterday, I think this would also be like just a really cool time capsule. Maybe one day my own kids listen to this, and this is one of the ways they get to know a little bit more about maybe who their grandfather was, or my future partner, who their father-in-law would have been. I kind of love that idea, and people can take this and do it with them. So I do not know Chris's questions, and Chris doesn't know mine. We're both going to ask a question alternating, but we will both answer each other's and our own. So with that being said, would you like to go first?
Oh, I didn't know we were answering our own too. I wouldn't have
Oh,
been so
oh yeah.
okay. I want to preface this exercise by saying that I wrote them at 4 o'clock in the morning. So, and I haven't revisited them since.
Perfect.
So, the first one that I have is what is the favorite trip or vacation or like extracurricular experience that you've had with your dad?
I think when we were young, after my parents' divorce, we used to go to this place up north. It was sort of like I don't know, like a resort where the dads would play golf during the day, and we'd be in the play center or doing tennis lessons or whatever. But I have this like very specific memory of like, I'm sure obviously you remember the song like Whoop, There It Is.
Yeah.
And basically for that entire weekend, and maybe even that entire summer, anytime we wanted my dad to like do anything for us or buy us anything or whatever, he would make us do Whoop, There It Is, and like do the dance move and like circle our hips. And I was a shy child, and I hated this game. My brother loved it, but I hated it. And so just imagine just throughout this entire resort, every time he'd be like, oh, can I go in the pool? And he'd be like, do the thing. So
Oh
anyway, I don't know why,
no.
but that is just like always, but like he would do it too. And just like picturing him do like the Whoop, There It is just like one of my like gold mine memories. So that's what came up right away.
Yeah, I obviously had something in mind when I wrote the question, and we went on what became our final family vacation to this resort. I think it was called Palmas del Mar in Puerto Rico. And my dad and I went for a swim while my sister and my mom went and did something else. And I got taken under, and I was taken for such a ride to the point. And I too was kind of like, I was a kid that was kind of scared of my own shadow. I was a kid that if a parent said, you can swim out to that buoy and that is it, I would swim out to that buoy and I would stay put, while my sister would be like on somebody's boat, like probably having a cocktail, you know. So I was tumbling and tumbling and tumbling, and my dad came in and tried to get me, and in doing so he lost the chain or the medal that belonged to my grandfather. It got pulled off of him. And not only did I feel like he was such a hero for like getting me out of that situation, but the following day we went for a walk on the beach, and that medal came into shore in the water right in front of us, and my dad got that medal back. And that's just something that I remember just being like, man, this guy could do anything, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that. Some of these are going to be deeper, and some of these are going to be like sort of housekeeping, like we are truly getting to know. Like my first one is, what was your dad's full name and how old would he be today? I'm gonna
His
have to get a
full
calculator. Sorry, go ahead.
his full name is Richard Edmond Caron. And I share a middle name with him and a last name. And he would be 70, I believe he would be 76, 77.
Okay. Yeah. So random. I don't know if you've ever
76.
have we talked about this before? Like my dad's name's Henry Tomás Brazil, or the Portuguese Henrique Tomás Brazil, but I am also a Tomás middle name. So I share the middle name as well.
Wow.
And he would be 62. And you know what? As the pickleball goes, it's your serve again.
Okay. Let's see what I got here. What songs remind you of your dad?
Hmm. Knock Three Times on the Ceiling by Tony Orlando and Dawn is like instant to my dad. In fact, we knocked 3 times on his casket before we saw it the last time. That's how like loving that song was for us. And he used to embarrass the hell out of me singing Elton John and Kiki D, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, like full of blast with the windows open in the car, just like blasting it out. So those two songs I would say are the two. What about you?
Um, we mentioned it last night. It came on Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. It will always remind me of my dad. And then there's a lot. Kodachrome by Paul Simon will always remind me of my dad. And there was one other on the tip of my tongue. Oh, the whole Tapestry album.
What was your dad doing when you picture this? What was your dad doing when he was happiest?
Golfing, playing basketball. He was on 3 baseball teams, and then he was a real family man. Something that's kind of cool about my dad, and I'm sure this will come up later, but he was kind of like a rough and tumble guy who grew up in Queens, on the streets of Queens. And if you picture like someone in a 1950s kid in a white tank top playing baseball in the street, like my dad is the picture of that. And he also had an incredibly sensitive and creative side. And so he would come home from work, he would ride his bike home from the train and take 30 minutes to himself to do something creative, whether that be sketching, playing the guitar, writing, bird watching, anything that was like kind of calming. And like obviously bird watching isn't creative, but you get the gist. A complete sensitive side that the rest of the world didn't necessarily see. And so I often think about that, and maybe doing one of those activities too is something that comes to mind.
I don't think my dad could be alone for 5 minutes. Definitely golfing, like very seriously loved golfing, talking, joking, dancing, and just like, I kind of see him like glowing, like when he would like be, I don't know, any chance he had to like brag about us, like it wasn't like, I'm not just saying this, but it really, like he just really lit up. Like he really was like a fan of us even when we didn't understand it. Like he just like loved telling people about us. And like I can remember, like, because I was young obviously, like just like seeing it out of the corner of my eye, like at a like competition or whatever, and being like, shut up. But it just be glowing and like, that's my son right there, the one that was on stage, and whatever, like he was big on that. So that I appreciate it obviously a lot more now. Back then I was like, please sir, please stop talking.
I have a fun story. I was a kid who was struggling to come out, and I knew that I was gay from a really young age, and so did my family, but I didn't necessarily come to terms with that. That's a conversation for a different episode. But I do have a vision of my dad as I was in the center of my living room, singing like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, truly probably like in a dress and ruby slippers, and everyone else in the family was kind of like, like feeling a little weird about it. And my dad was like, all right, like as if it was the winning touchdown of the high school football game. So
I love that. I
yeah,
really do. I
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Somewhere my mother will be listening to this going, oh, you're not going to share your ruby slipper story, Addison? No, no, Kim, I'm not, if you're listening out there. But my dad was also very fine if it's my Wizard of Oz stage. I will say that.
Why do we all have it?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's you. Is it you or is it me? I'm losing. No, it's you because I asked what was your
Oh
dad
yeah.
most happiest. Yeah. So question
Yes.
3.
What's one valuable lesson your dad taught you that you carry with you today and you will pass on to your children?
I knew there would be questions like this. I like how also I told you yesterday that I'm trying to say less and I just like, but this is the type of episode where you say a lot, and anybody who's really ever
Yeah.
grieved will know that like is the how do I not cry and answer this question. So and then I do it again. I think see, this is like I have it tied into like one of the questions I was gonna ask you, but I'm just gonna go with the flow of this and just say that my dad was always where he said he was gonna be. And I noticed from a very young age that that was not true for the majority of adults. He always did what he said he was going to do, and it was always where he said he was going to be. Like in terms of even just like anytime he picked me up, like if my dad was even like 5 minutes late, like I was sure something happened. Like he just was always there, and the value of that, he and the value of, and you've seen this with me, but trying to deeply connect with everyone and bringing in people who unexpectedly like you just met. Like if I meet somebody and I'm like, oh, well, you should come to this with us next week. Like I just loved how he always sort of tried to bring in other people and the value of how naturally you can build community if you're just willing to like get past your own shyness and really help other people with theirs. I think would be the biggest thing. That definitely comes from him for me, is just that idea of sort of invite everybody over kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, my dad would famously say, "This ain't no dress rehearsal," and I think he really lived the life that he was given to the fullest. He had so much fun. He had so many friends. He had such a full life. He had every bucket was full. His work life was filled with successes and with friendships. His home life was filled with a loving wife and 2 children that adored him, and it's funny, you were talking, I forget exactly what it was, but my dad had a signature dance move at weddings. And when I say what's the lesson that I learned from my dad, it's to dance through life in that same fashion, because once he was out there, he didn't care and he made everyone have the best time around him. And he also had a contagious laugh. And I like to think that I have a contagious laugh, and I can fill the room with laughter. That's something that I got from my dad.
Actually, so wild how alike our dads were.
Yeah.
Henry's dance move, which all of my buddies, if they're listening from the old days, will know. We called it the hammer, and it was like this very aggressive dance move that he loved to do at like weddings and charity galas. But
Yeah.
same thing, life of the party, and just like really, just lived for that. So I love that.
You've reached Grief Club. Leave a message after the beep.
Hey, Grief Club, it's Addy. Yeah, I am back talking during the ad, which should be your well-deserved break from listening to me talk, but we know sometimes that's not how it works. I just wanted to say, if you are really enjoying this, if you are feeling connected, a little less isolated and going, I only get this once a week, how can I stay connected throughout the rest of the week? The answer is social media. Now, remember, when you're using social media, we want to use conscious consumption, and that's what I always promise at Share My Grief Club. I'll put it in the show notes. anything that I don't create, I consciously curate, and it's all designed to help people on their way, to honor their journey, and if all else fails, find the funny. We'll see you there. My turn. This is, what surprised you most about your dad during his cancer battle?
I think his cancer battle was very, 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 very challenging in that, like, if he was not in the hospital, there was a hospital bed in my parents' bedroom, and he had screws and metal on his head and all of this stuff. So I would say that we really lost the version of my dad that we knew at age 14. And so during the battle, I don't necessarily think that, like, he had the wherewithal or the ability to impress, if that makes sense. But what I will say is that he was still devoted to getting a video of my production of Little Shop of Horrors, or getting my mom to take him to see me in Jesus Christ Superstar with, like, a neck brace and all of this stuff. So I would say maybe in the earlier days, like the dedication to family that remained true, and the fight. I mean, it was a 2-year fight. So
I'll inverse it. Obviously, my dad died of suicide, so, which in our family we consider that the same way you might die of cancer or of a heart attack, like, that's our viewpoint on that. You die of suicide.
Yes,
I would say what surprised me most was just how, and this is pre-Robin Williams, I guess. So I guess what surprised me most was how quickly it all progressed, I guess, in a sense, and that he went from being the person we were just talking about, like the life of the party, to, really like deep pairing with life in a very serious, quick way. I think that this kind of serves as, like, also just like a mental health advisory of just like, there's no timeline on someone dealing with depression, like it happened very quickly. And I remember thinking, like, okay, something's up, but like, if it was really bad, like, it would be months, right? And then we would, like, take him to a hospital, but like, he just seems really off this week, kind of thing. And that switch was there. And so it surprises me because I always thought I always knew what my dad was thinking. Like, he didn't have to talk. Like, to me, sometimes I felt like I was babysitting my dad in that way. Like, especially, like, I don't know, like the way he sort of behaves similar to my brother, where I could, like, hear his thoughts. And so I think what surprised me the most is how clearly and protectively he probably was dealing with a lot more of that I, like, wasn't aware of until much later when I started to dig and whatnot. So I think that was surprising in someone who would be getting to know him now. That's how I'd answer that. I'll leave it there and pass it back to you.
Yeah, let me pull up the next one. Mine go pretty deep. 4:00 in the morning, baby. If there is another place that we go after our time on this planet, what is your dad doing right now, and who is he doing it with?
I'll tell you how my dad would like you to answer that question. Exactly what he's doing and who he's doing it with. Yeah, supermodel. I think if there is, I would hope that then he's with my brother. And they're just doing what we've been talking about. I mean, meeting the other people in the other place and, like, making them watch their stupid stand-up specials that they put on by themselves. I think honestly, yeah, like laughing and joking and getting the ultimate hope, which probably was one of his ultimate hopes, should he ever pass, was that, at least in that sense, he would be reconnected with my younger brother, who our listeners know died of a brain tumor 4 years earlier. But I'll just say it again in case Chris Caron's influence brings a whole slew of new people on. What about you?
Well, my dad was seemingly like 14, 15 years older than your dad. So I think his circle is broadening in wherever it is that we go. So I would assume that he's enjoying a nice round of golf or a tennis match with a friend, and then followed by a nice duels or I mean, let's face it, he can probably have the real stuff with my cousin. And my cousin died of melanoma 2 years ago at age 31, and she too was the life of the party. And those two, they didn't get to know each other that well because obviously he died 22 years ago. She would be 32, so or 33. But anyway, I would hope that they're having a good chuckle over a nice beer.
Mm. It's so true that only the good die young. So I guess us wicked witches will just be here till the end.
Just be creeping around these streets.
Okay. Next question. What's one thing, this comes up a lot for me losing my dad young, but like what's one thing you wish, and it can be simple, it can be a one-word answer. What's one thing you wish you had learned from your dad, something that you knew he knew how to do, but he didn't teach you before he passed?
Well, if anyone knows me, I do not know how to shave my face correctly. I cut my face every time I bring a razor to it. So I think my mom did her best. She watched videos online, but I think in the most simple way, that's something I wish my dad could have given me some pointers on. How about you?
My dad used to like go on the weekends and like build people's decks for fun. I mean, like he was a successful like stockbroker, trader, like whatever, but like he came from being like this, poor Portuguese immigrant, and he could build anything. And like I just think it's wild that sometimes I feel like ill-equipped to hang a picture, and this man used to like build custom decks for fun on a Saturday. And like like he finished people's basements. Like so I just more of that kind of stuff. I just, when I'm like trying to fix up my own house and stuff, I'm like, God, I wish I learned more of like those skills. But didn't. Yeah. What's your next question?
My next one is, I already answered it for myself because I don't abide by the one word answer rule, apparently, something I'm learning about myself. But I'm going to ask you because I'm curious. What is one surprising thing about your dad's personality?
Surprising thing about his personality. I think that it's fair to say, and when somebody once said to me, like, one thing you want to stay away with when you lose someone is either making them sort of like God or the devil, like eulogizing them like too much, or like just allowing them to be real people. And you can talk about those moments too. And I think what's surprising is that a lot of people didn't know how much stress he also had and how much that affected him. And like he did everything to support us, and the man worked on commission his whole life, like through the crashes of 87, 2000, 2008, and I think it was surprising to me how little other people could see into that because of his sort of Robin Williams like personality from the outside. And I say that with complete respect, that that's what was like offered to us. And I've written that before about Robin Williams, but I just, the surprising part was like how deeply hurt he could be, how deeply sensitive and stressed, and that how so few people realized that. They saw his exuberance as like resilience, like beyond measure. And like there were just times where you have to be like, no, that's like still a real person. Yeah, I think that's the honest answer, at least.
Yeah. Mine I mentioned about like the sensitive
Yes.
side.
Like that. Okay. What advice do you think your dad would give you today?
I think my dad would encourage me to let go of some of the stuff that I like unnecessarily ruminate on. I think he would just, I think my dad would bring me back to center and kind of highlight all of the things I should be proud of. I'm not sure if that answered the question.
Perfectly. Yeah. I think interestingly enough, I make my dad this thing in my head of like, he'd be like, be more responsible, do this with your money, whatever. But I honestly think like if he could give me advice right now, he'd be like, have the time of your life. Like, you know, I really do think he'd be like, try everything, go everywhere, do everything. As much as I think of him as sort of that, like, you know, just save money and whatever kind of guy. I really don't think that's the perspective that he would offer now, if that makes any sense.
Totally. Yeah, my dad instilled such a work ethic in us, and I think that I think he would say to me like, sit back, man, you did it. Like now just let it happen, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Next question.
Yes, is it me?
Yeah, I think.
What's a meal or beverage or both that will always remind you of your dad?
The smell of Labatt Ice, which is a Canadian beer. And he would like smother us in kisses, and I can like smell that. And then my dad used to make this like lamb chop meal that like just tasted so good. And the way my dad seasons steak, and it is like one of those other ones that I wish I knew exactly what he did, because we're like unsure, but it was just something we thought he'd always make. But so definitely like steak and Labatt Ice. There's a free ad for Labatt.
So funny. For me, it's a little less sophisticated, but I guess not that much. No, but then the steak. My dad, I'll always think of him when I have like cream cheese and jelly on a bagel. And then he would have an after dinner drink of sambuca, which is something that I never see. So if anyone has it nowadays, I just immediately think of him. It tastes like black licorice, and it's hard to swallow.
When you think of your dad, what, like, if you had to pick one physical feature that's like, oh, like that's what I think of, what is it?
My dad had a big French nose.
Yeah, I think I have to say eyes, which is weird because that's not what I thought when I originally said it. But yeah, I think his eyes or his smile. He would want me to say his six pack that he still had at 51, and he would show you at every event that he went to, which also I always thought I would die of embarrassment before either of these men died in my life, but turns out that's not how it works.
That's so good. Also a mustache. My dad had a mustache my whole life.
Which usually you would have some sort of as well.
I've had one. I just shaved it recently. I had one for like 7 or 8 years.
It's you. Yeah. Next question.
Oh, what's the most embarrassing thing? This is good. What's the most embarrassing thing your dad ever did to you as a kid?
As a kid?
Or as a person?
Yeah. As a person. You're a kid, and then you become a person.
Delineation. Exactly.
You heard that here today, kids. One day you'll be a person. If you're really good. Most embarrassing thing. Oh God, everything this man ever did embarrassed me. I don't know why I was so shy. There was an instance in high school where my brother caught me doing something with my girlfriend at the time, and my brother and my father, in like, because my brother at the time was going through his brain tumor battle, these two men like just like would not leave me alone, but in the presence of like neurosurgeons and nurses, and just like kept teasing me and like bringing it up in front of everybody and talking about it, and they just knew that it just like embarrassed me so deeply. But in retrospect, I think that was one of the most joyful days of their lives, to just really torture me like that.
Yeah. For me, I was famous for not bringing my textbooks home to to do my homework. And my dad would get super frustrated because they would have to like drive me back to, like, truly it was just, I was just postponing doing the homework. I wasn't even not going to do the homework. They just had to then drive me back to school. And I remember my dad went in like the tightest high water sweatpants, and we were walking through the hallways when I was in junior high, 7th or 8th grade, and like everyone saw him just like walking with me, and I was mortified by the appearance of it all, and I never got over it.
And then my next question is like, dun, dun, dun. What's one thing you think your dad wished he did better? And you don't have to go deep, but
Oof. I think that maybe my dad had aspirations to be a writer. He had aspirations to like take a creative route, and I think that he got caught up in high school and beyond, and he didn't really see that through. And I think that if he had another shot at it, he would have done that better. He would have found that, realized that dream for himself.
Yeah, I think honestly, probably, I mean, my parents were very young when our family got started, and I think that in retrospect, they both, maybe especially him, maybe wouldn't have involved us so much in like the inner knowing of it all as children. And I won't go into it. They can wait for the memoir, but I think there's one specific day where I think he wished he protected me, is all I'll say. And that's just, you know, he's a fully feeling, fully flawed human being, and that, well, we all have that one thing, you know, that we wish we did. So I just wanted to make sure I asked a question like that, not just praising and, you know, doing
that. What did he do for a living?
That was one of my questions too. He was a stock trader. He built his way up from nothing. My dad didn't go past 9th grade in high school. He kind of had a few jobs. He worked in the kitchen at a hospital. He met someone that worked in the stock market and just kind of became like this, from what I understand, sort of like the rookie, junior, new guy that was just kind of killing it in the early 90s on the stock exchange floor. And one of the other stockbrokers actually is who introduced my parents as well. So yeah, that's what he did. Yeah, he was on, like, I used to go when I was little, and like when it was like the floor and they'd all be trading and yelling and the operators on the phone, like it was like my favorite thing to do, to skip school and go to work with my dad. It was just like, it was insane. It was Wolf of Wall Street, but the Canadian version. So the polite Wolf of Wall Street, basically. But yeah, that's what he did when I was growing up. Yeah.
My dad was an electrician. He was a union man. And he got to do some really fun jobs. Like he worked at the US Open every summer. So we got to go to the tennis open. And he had one highly secretive government job that I asked my mom if I could talk about on this podcast, and she said no. So I'll tell you later.
Just get shut out. Do I have to edit that?
No.
And then everything goes black.
Yeah.
The episode never airs. Okay, we're rounding out on our last two questions, which I have been inspired and shifted a little bit, so I'm trying to decide which I want to do. But you know what, that can be 12. Okay, so I'm going to ask, what is your relationship with your dad like now?
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on it so that we can answer them both at the same time, because mine is, what is one thing that has happened to you that you've taken as a sign from your dad? And I think that those two things are pretty interconnected.
And that was a very polite way of saying, I get to ask my question first. And I have for the last 9, you idiot. Okay, do you want to go first and piggyback both?
No, let's just do that. So what what's the relationship that I have with my dad now? My dad is part of my everyday life. I talk about my dad honestly, almost every day. The loss of my dad has become a defining experience for me, and it has shaped my personality exponentially. So it comes up a lot in conversation. I have a spiritual connection to my dad. I see signs from my dad every time my family sees a red cardinal. We think, and I know that that's something that everyone, kind of relates to their family members who have passed. But we have some really cool moments. Like, I was going through a bunch of callbacks for a job that I really, really wanted back when I was an actor. And every time I got another callback, I saw a cardinal. And in the final callback, right before I went in, I hadn't seen a cardinal, but someone in the waiting room was watching a game on their phone and screamed "Go Cardinals" as I was walking into the room. So I was like, I took that as a sign, and I always look for little signs and little ways to connect with my dad. That's our current relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting, and people may resonate with this, but I was a lot more that way with my brother. But then, because my dad's death was traumatic and had an element of PTSD to it,
Yeah.
I sort of had to let go of everything that wasn't another person standing beside me would say was physically in the room. I just got to a place where, because of like flashbacks and whatnot, like I was just trying so hard to decipher between all of that like with my dad, a harder part of my dad as well, I worked through the post-traumatic response of it, is I sort of also lost any sense of spirituality or God. I was brought up Catholic, but at that point was more spiritual, I would say. My relationship now with my dad, I have a very different point of view on all of it. I think of it like kind of like he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, like Santa Claus of it all. I don't like the idea that like my dad and my brother are somewhere like watching me like for the
Oh yeah.
rest of my life. So like I feel like they are, energetically released. And my relationship with my dad right now, I would say, is of just of great appreciation. The amount of times I realize, like, I'm now 34, and just things every day where I go, I pay for something, or somebody says like, something about their kids or whatever, and I go, God, like he really, like, he did so much for us, and he was so like so good to us, and so it lives in appreciation, if that makes any sense. And yeah, I don't really like the signs. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, it doesn't bring me more peace. I know that it does others, but it doesn't. And like,
Mm.
I mean, this Powerball ticket right here, trust me, if there was a way that man could get through, it would have happened. um, but yeah, no, I actually take a lot more peace, and this is probably going to resonate for other people who maybe have suffered traumatic loss. But with both my friend and my dad, I take a lot more peace in the lack of their presence, because it makes me feel like they're free, and they're, either they're both actually dancing in energy wherever they are. And that is hard to say, because it would be easier for me to like try to keep him, and I do talk my appreciation out loud, but whether or not I feel like, there's a real phone line there is something I'm blurry on. And that's why grief clubs for life, figuring that out always. So yeah. Whew. Ugh, that one. All right. All right. Our last question. What's your last question?
What's one accomplishment you wish you'd been able to share with your dad?
Hmm. Mm, I the future accomplishment of building my family.
Mm.
I think my dad was just the dude to be ultimate father-in-law and grandfather. And that is something that just always kind of just in the quiet of the night gets me. That my kids maybe will listen to this, or my partner will listen to the stories and get the gist, but there's something, my dad sort of did have that movie star kind of weird thing, and there's just something about being in his presence that and my brother had it too, but like that you had to be there. So I wish that in those future accomplishments, and to me, that will be one of my biggest accomplishments, because the number one lesson of my grief was subconsciously, do not love again, do not connect, do not build a family, because you'll lose people, and so that is like one of the greatest accomplishments I've been working towards. And I know it's a future accomplishment, but I'm going to manifest it. That when I do find that and build that from myself, that I won't be able to share. And the comedian side of me is also like, well, half my accomplishments are because he died, so I don't know how to answer that. But I mean, so much of like writing a book about grief and mental health and like so much of it is because I'm like, well, I wish he was here and we could just have beers and I could be like, not have accomplished anything actually.
Right.
I'm sure there's more. There's more,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page when it comes to future accomplishments. Like I do wish that my dad could have met my niece and nephew, and he too was just cut out to be grandpa of the year. But one thing that I think I wish I could have shared with him is the act of coming out. I had a really difficult time with it, and I think I had a difficult time with it because of his passing. So similarly, it may not be the same story, because I was ready and prepared to do it at age 14, and then his death kind of like took me on a completely different path. So who knows? Maybe it just would have been a completely different scenario, but I would have been really proud for that, like as I mentioned earlier, that rough and tumble ball player from Queens to like be so super proud of his gay son, and I know he was, because I would be remiss not to mention my favorite story, that he waited at Radio City Music Hall to get me an autograph from Liza Minnelli when I was 8 years old, and he brought it home with a Wizard of Oz coffee table book. So I know he was already on board, but I wish we could have celebrated that, and he could have experienced what it was like to live on my side of the fence.
Oh, I almost made it without tears. That's beautiful. And I would be remiss if we're remissing not tell the story. I think I recently told you this, but I'll never forget when we were at like Darien Lake or whatever those theme parks are, where the person has to guess like your weight or your age or whatever, and if they get it wrong, then you get a prize. I don't know what question I got asked that they got it wrong, because I was obviously 8 years old and 80 pounds, but whatever. But I won, and I just remember looking at all the prizes, and there was this framed picture of Reba McEntire that was like fake signed, and I went, I want that. And my dad just looked at me and was like, you are something, but of course, and I love you. And it was just like, there were those moments where I had those similar moments where it's, whatever you're going to be in this world, like, I love you. And I know that is so rare in our community, but I had that from both my mother and my brother so many times, where it was almost like chill, but I always felt that, and obviously I danced at the highest level all the way through, way before it was cool, way before So You Think, like, and just being at every competition. I mean, he traveled all the way to Germany just to see me compete at the Worlds, and like just couldn't be more proud. And especially then when Dancing with the Stars and So You Think came out, he's like, yeah, that's what he does, just like that, just so excited or whatever. So yeah, I love that. Okay, last question is mine. If you knew one sentence could fully reach your dad right now, what would you say?
Don't do this to me.
We got to do it for the ratings, kid.
Do you have yours? Because I need a moment to think about it, I think. I have one sentence to say to my dad, who has been gone for 22 years, and you want me to come up with it right now?
I think that's the beauty of it, though, is just take a breath, and in this moment, what would you say right now? One sentence is going through.
I think I would say thank you for all of the love that you showed me, even when it was challenging for you to maybe accept the child that I was. And thank you for the path that you have laid out for me, because I do believe that my dad walks with me. And I don't think he's there every moment. I don't think he looks at my most disgraced times, but I do think that my dad, or a version of my dad, or the belief in who my dad was, or his belief in me, has led me to all of the successes that I have found in this life. And I think I would say thank you. And maybe I would say thank you and I'm sorry, because my dad deserved a lot more time. So
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like I was saying earlier, just like the back end of the appreciation, I would definitely just be saying thank you, I love you, and I understand.
Yeah.
Which is lovely. Okay, so really quickly, like, is there anything?
I'm like, it better be quick. My makeup is about to run, honey.
Okay, that's the segue. We always end the show with Find the Funny. So instead of doing our own Find the Funnies, because I don't want the world to know what we find funny, with the memes that we exchange, just really quickly, like what would like have your dad in a riot? Like, where would he find the funny? I mean, like, what movie, what comedy, like where is he laughing so hard his gut hurts?
What's interesting is I really couldn't tell you the answer to that. That's something that really stumps me, because I didn't know my dad as an adult man. I didn't know my dad when I was an adult man. And like 13 years old, we weren't watching the same.
Yeah, but like when you picture him laughing, what's happening? Does anything come up?
No, nothing.
Oh my God.
I mean,
I like try to end the show on a nice, funny note, and you're like, I can't remember my dad ever laughing.
No, my dad was always laughing. Let me answer the question. My dad was always laughing. It just wasn't a movie or a television show that would bring that laughter.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. If I'm picturing my dad laughing, it is tailgating after his baseball game. All of my uncles were on a baseball team called the Rank Amateurs, and every Sunday we went to watch them play, and they did banner days for the kids, and there were activities for the entire family. And every week after the game, there would be a tailgate where they would stay in the parking lot and have a couple of beers, and they would put Yoo-hoo in the coolers for myself, my sister, my cousins, and the other kids that were around. And then we would go to Bennigan's, which is, I think, a chain restaurant. And they would all hang by the bar, and then the wives would go and sit with the kids and feed us dinner and stuff like that. And I have vivid memories of my dad in his Rank Amateurs baseball uniform, with all of my uncles just having like a huge cackle. So it was all rooted in community and family, and community, family, and fun.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. And then I'm like, my dad like loved like the dumbest, like whatever, like the thing that you roll your eyes at, like at the time, like the comedy, they're just trying too hard, like not the hits, but like the off Adam Sandler or like the off David Spade of it all, like, that sort of like just dumb, like him and my brother just loved like dumb, funny things, like the Mista lady, like just like doing voices and just like that stuff for sure. And we have a very special connection with Mrs. Doubtfire as well.
Oh yeah.
In our family for sure. And he just would do like sort of all the voices and all those things. So that's definitely how I picture him. All right, well, music's gonna play us out. One word to check out. Thank you so much for being here, buddy. My word checking out is grateful. I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, I think my word is maybe the same. I'm really grateful for your friendship. I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for this conversation and the time and the space to honor our dads. It's not a conversation that you get to dive deep into regularly. So it's nice to have a friend that can kind of shoot the shit in this way.
I appreciate that. I knew you'd try to sneak in something sentimental.
You're like, can you just do one word answers?
Exactly. I'm going to name this episode The Rank Amateurs Talk About Their Dead Dads and Try to Do It in One Word or Less and Fail. The longest sentence
Thank you
ever.
so much for having me.
So
All right.
Bye.
Well, Grief Club, that's the show. If you enjoyed it, please let us know by liking and leaving a review. This will help as many people who may need what we're talking about find it the fastest. Remember to honor the journey, and when that gets tough, find the funny.